The mountain has a name. The cave has no door. Inside it, an old man lies with his face to the wall. He has not eaten in a day. He has not slept in 2. He has walked 40 days into a desert that almost no one has ever crossed on foot. Not because he is going somewhere, but because he is running from something. He carries no water for the next leg. He has no plan beyond the cave. He has just asked God to let him die. And the strange part is this. 1 week ago, he was the most fearless man alive. He called fire down out of a clear sky in front of an entire kingdom. He outprayed 450 pagan priests on a mountaintop while the crowd watched. He ran ahead of a king's chariot through a storm and arrived faster than the horses. Then, one woman sent one threat. Just one. And the man who could call down fire could not stop the fire in his own head. You know this room. You may not know its name yet, but you know its ceiling. You know the way it stares back at you at 3 a.m. You know the way one sentence someone said on Tuesday becomes the conversation you cannot stop revising on Saturday. You know the way the mind, once it starts spinning, becomes the only room left in the house. We will get to that cave. We will get to that mountain. We will get to the moment a prophet who called fire down from heaven asked God if he could please just lie down under a tree and not get back up. But not yet, because before we get there, 6 other people have to walk through this video, 6 other minds that could not stop, 6 other people God walked up to, not above, not over, but right into the spinning. And he said something to each of them that almost no sermon ever points out. This is not a video about positive thinking. This is not a video about silencing your mind. This is not a video about spiritual bypass. This is a video about every time the God of the universe walked into a room full of someone spinning thoughts and said one specific thing that made the spinning stop. 7 people, 7 encounters, one pattern hiding underneath all of them. And by the time we get back to that cave on that mountain in the dark, you will know exactly what God says to a mind that cannot quiet down, because he says it the same way, every single time. We start with a woman behind a tent. Her name is Sarah. She is 89 years old. She has been married to the same man for 64 years. And for 64 years, she has been waiting for a child that never came. 3 strangers are at the tent flap. One of them, somehow, knows her name without being told. He says something so absurd that Sarah, who has buried this hope so many times she has run out of dirt, laughs. She does not laugh out loud. She laughs inside the tent. She laughs inside her chest. It is the kind of laugh you make when you have been disappointed so many times that disappointment has become a reflex faster than hope. And then the stranger turns toward the tent and says into the air, "Why did Sarah laugh?" Stop and feel that for a second. He heard a laugh she did not make out loud. She panics. She says she didn't laugh. He says, with the gentlest correction in Scripture, "No, but you did laugh." He does not rebuke the laugh. He names it. There is a Hebrew word for that laugh, tzachak. And 1 year later, when the impossible child is born, God will tell Sarah to name the boy after the laugh, Isaac. Laughter, as if to say, the bitter sound your mind made when you stopped believing, that is going to be the name of the proof I was telling the truth. Here is what most people miss about that story. God did not tell Sarah to stop doubting. He did not lecture her on faith. He asked one question. He named one feeling. And he kept his promise anyway. That is the first overthinker. The second one is standing in front of a bush that is burning without burning up. His name is Moses. He is 80 years old. He used to be a prince in Egypt. Now, he is a shepherd in a foreign country, married to a foreign woman, hiding from a murder he committed 40 years ago. Josephus, the Jewish historian, writes in the second book of his Antiquities that Moses spent those 40 years in Midian, 40 years on the backside of the desert. And you have to understand what 40 years of silence does to a mind. He had 4 full decades to rehearse every reason he was the wrong man for any job God might ever give him. And then the bush starts talking. What follows is not one objection, it is 5. Read it for yourself. Exodus chapter 3 into chapter 4. Moses says, "Who am I?" Then he says, "What is your name?" Then he says, "What if they do not believe me?" Then he says, "I am slow of speech. I am heavy of tongue." The Hebrew there literally means heavy of mouth. Then, finally, with the bush still burning, he says the most overthought sentence in the Old Testament: send someone else. God does not answer the objections. He answers with the name. I am that I am. The Hebrew is ehyeh, asher, ehyeh. It is the most present tense verb in any language ever spoken on earth. It does not mean I was. It does not mean I will be. It means I am being right now what I am being right now, and I will keep being it forever. God answered an overthinker with the most present tense sentence ever spoken. He pulled Moses out of 40 years of past regret and out of the future he was already catastrophizing about, and dropped him into one verb: now. Notice what he did not do. God never argued with Moses' 5 objections. He never said, actually, you are a good speaker. You are qualified. The people will believe you. He just said his own name. And the name was a tense. That is the second overthinker. But it gets stranger, because the third one is not standing in front of a fire. The third one is hiding in a hole in the ground. His name is Gideon. The Israelites are being crushed by a foreign army called the Midianites. And Gideon is so afraid of them that he is threshing wheat inside a wine press to hide the harvest. Stop and picture that. A wine press is a stone pit you stand in to crush grapes with your feet. It is the wrong tool, in the wrong place, in the wrong shape for threshing wheat. He is using it because the walls hide him. And then an angel sits down under a tree and calls him, "Thou mighty man of valor." Gideon looks around. There is nobody else in the wine press. The angel says, "Go and save Israel." Gideon says, "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." He runs the math. He has run the math his entire life. He is not the man. So he asks for a sign. He puts out a fleece of wool on the ground. He says, "God, if you really mean this, let the fleece be wet with dew tomorrow morning and the ground be dry around it." He wakes up. The fleece is so wet he wrings out a bowl of water from it. The ground is bone dry. You would think that would be enough. It is not. Gideon, the overthinker, asks for a second sign, and he reverses the parameters, just in case the first one was a coincidence. He says, "Okay, this time let the ground be wet and the fleece be dry," and God does it again. Watch the move God makes here. He does not get angry the second time. He does not say, "Gideon, you already saw the sign. Where is your faith?" He gives the second sign. He meets the overthinker inside the loop, not above it, not over it, inside it. 3 encounters, 3 different centuries, 3 completely different people. And already a pattern is starting to form under your feet, and you may not have seen it yet. But we are only halfway up the staircase, because next, Justice walks into a kitchen. Then he walks across a sea. Then he walks through a wall. And what he says to the overthinkers he meets there will tell you something about your own mind that you have probably never heard from a pulpit. 3 down, 4 to go. And if this is doing something for you right now, if you saw a little of yourself in Sarah's silent laugh, or in Moses arguing with a bush for 5 chapters, or in Gideon laying out a second piece of wool because the first one didn't quite settle it, do me one favor before we keep going. Subscribe. Hit the bell, because what is coming in the second half is the hidden pattern that almost no sermon ever points out. There is one thing every single one of these encounters has in common. One move God makes every single time with every single overthinker. We are about to name it. But first, 3 more rooms. A kitchen in Bethany where Jesus is about to be interrupted by the woman who is supposed to be serving him. A sea in Galilee where a fisherman is about to do the impossible and then start doing math. And a locked room in Jerusalem where a man has been replaying the same conversation for 8 straight days. Pay attention to what God does in those 3 rooms, because once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it for the rest of this video. The first room is a kitchen in Bethany. The woman in it is named Martha. She owns the house. Her sister Mary and her brother Lazarus live with her, but the deed is in her name. Luke says so. She is the older sister, the organizer, the one who remembers everyone's birthday. She is, in every family system you have ever met, the one who carries the weight. Jesus is in her living room. He is sitting on the floor, the way teachers sat in first century Judea with the disciples around him. Mary, her younger sister, is on the floor in front of him listening. She is not helping. She is not chopping anything. She is not refilling anyone's cup. She is just sitting. And Martha is in the kitchen doing the only thing she has ever known how to do. She is preparing the meal she is supposed to be eating with him. If you have ever served at the church and resented the people who got to enjoy it, you know this kitchen. She walks out. She does not pull Jesus aside. She interrupts the whole room. She says, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me." And Jesus does the most surprising thing a teacher could do in that culture in that moment. He says her name twice. Martha, Martha. That is not a rebuke. In the ancient Near East, when someone says your name twice in a row, it is the most tender form of address a person could use. Abraham, Abraham, Moses, Moses, Saul, Saul. Every time it happens in the Bible, it is God leaning in close. Then Jesus says, "You are careful and troubled about many things." The Greek word he uses is merimnao. It does not mean you are thinking too much. Look it up. It means you are being pulled in different directions. You are fragmented. You are scattered into pieces. That is not a definition of worry. That is a definition of overthinking. 2,000 years before there was a word for it in English, Jesus had a word for it in Greek. And he used it on a woman in a kitchen. He does not tell her to stop thinking. He tells her there is one thing needful. 1, not 5. Not a system, not a plan. 1. That is the 4th overthinker. The 5th one is on water. It is the 4th watch of the night, which is roughly 3 in the morning, which is, you will notice, the same hour as the cave we are still walking toward. The disciples are in a boat in the middle of the Sea of Galilee in a storm. Jesus walks toward them on the surface of the water. Peter, who has never thought a thought all the way through in his life, says, "Lord, if it is you, bid me come." Jesus says one word, "Come." And Peter, a Galilean fisherman who has spent his entire life knowing exactly what water does to bodies, gets out of the boat. He walks on water. He is doing the impossible. And then he starts doing math. Read it. Matthew chapter 14. It says, when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. He is already doing it. The miracle is already happening underneath his feet. And he stops looking at the man who said, come, and starts calculating the storm. Wind speed, wave height, body weight. Faith collapses into arithmetic. He sinks. He cries 3 words, Lord, save me. Jesus does not give him a lecture. He does not say, Peter, if you had really believed, you would still be walking. He reaches, he grabs, he pulls. The next sentence is the one most sermons skip. The wind, Matthew says, did not stop until they were both back in the boat. So when Jesus says, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? He is saying it inside the storm. The boat is still rocking. The water is still lifting. Peter is soaking. And Jesus is asking him a question while the storm is still going. That is the 5th overthinker. The 6th one is in a locked room in Jerusalem. His name is Thomas. The disciples call him Didymus, which means the twin. He is not the doubter you have heard about in flannel graph Sunday school. Earlier in the Gospel of John, when everyone else is afraid to follow Jesus into Judea because they will probably die there, Thomas is the one who says, let us also go that we may die with him. That is not a coward. But on the night Jesus rose, Thomas was not in the room. For the next 8 days, he has been replaying what the other disciples told him. 8 days, 192 hours. He has rehearsed his terms by now. He has thought it through. He has decided, I will believe, but only if I see the print of the nails and put my finger in the print and thrust my hand into his side. He has run the math on resurrection. He has set the parameters. 8 days later, Jesus walks through the wall. He does not argue with Thomas. He does not say, Thomas, you should have believed without seeing. He says, reach hither thy finger. Jesus uses Thomas's exact words back to him. The terms Thomas said inside his own head, God overheard them, and he provided the evidence. That is the 6th overthinker. Now stop. Stop and look at what just happened 6 times in a row. God did not tell Sarah to stop laughing. He named the laugh. God did not silence Moses. He gave him a name. God did not shame Gideon. He gave him a second sign. Jesus did not tell Martha to stop spinning. He said her name twice. Jesus did not lecture Peter. He grabbed his arm. Jesus did not argue with Thomas. He held out his hands. 6 overthinkers, 6 different centuries, 6 different rooms, 6 different specific problems. And not one time, not one single time in any of those 6 stories did God say what we tell overthinkers to do. He never said, just stop thinking about it. Not once. Here is what he did instead. Every single time, he used their name. He asked them a question. He moved them into their body. Touch the wounds, take the bread, get out of the boat, eat the food, bring out the fleece. He got specific about time and place, this hand, this mountain, this moment, and he gave them one next thing, not a plan. One thing, 5 moves, same pattern, 6 different overthinkers across 2,000 years of scripture. Pay attention to this, because we have one more room to walk into, and the man inside it is going to test every single one of those 5 moves at once. Before we walk into that last room, I need you to picture another one first. You know what it feels like. It is 3 a.m. The ceiling is the wrong color. You are running the conversation again. The one from Tuesday. The one you cannot stop revising. You have already decided what you should have said. Now you are deciding what they meant. You are deciding what they meant by what they meant. You have lived in your own head for so many hours that your head is the only room left in the house. If you have ever been there at 3 in the morning in the only room left, you have already stood in this last cave. You just did not know it had a name. The name is Horeb. The man inside it is Elijah. 1 week before this cave, he was the most fearless man alive. He stood on Mount Carmel in front of an entire nation with 450 prophets of a false god on the other side, and he prayed one sentence. Fire fell out of a clear sky and burned up not just the sacrifice, but the stones, but the water, but the dust. Then he ran ahead of King Ahab's chariot through a storm and arrived at the city faster than the horses. Then one queen named Jezebel sent one messenger with one threat. By this time tomorrow, I will have done to you what you did to my prophets. And the man who could call down fire could not stop the fire in his own head. He runs. He runs a full day into the wilderness. He sits down under a juniper tree, and he prays the saddest prayer in the Old Testament. It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life. He does not even ask for rescue. He asks for the off switch. He falls asleep under the tree. And here is the first move God makes. Not a sermon, not a verse, not a lecture about why despair is bad theology. An angel touches him and cooks him bread. The angel says, "Arise and eat." He eats. He lies back down. The angel comes back and says, "Arise and eat again, because the journey is too great for thee." Notice what God did for the most overthought man in the Old Testament. He did not say, "Think different thoughts." He fed him twice. He let him sleep twice. He put bread in his body before he put words in his ear. God's first move for an overthinker in full collapse. Feed the body, sleep the mind, then we will talk. Then Elijah walks 40 days on that bread. 40 days to the same mountain where Moses once argued with a bush. He climbs it. He crawls into a cave. He lies down with his face to the wall, and God shows up. But not the way you would expect God to show up for a man with a storm in his head. First, a wind comes that breaks the rocks of the mountain in pieces. A wind so violent, it would have drowned out any thought any human ever had. And God is not in the wind. Then an earthquake, the whole mountain shaking under Elijah's body. And God is not in the earthquake. Then a fire, the same element Elijah called down on Carmel 1 week earlier. And God is not in the fire. He was not in the wind. He was not in the earthquake. He was not in the fire. He was in the thin, whispering hush that came after. The Hebrew is damama daka. It does not translate cleanly into English. The King James calls it a still, small voice. The literal Hebrew is something closer to the sound of a thin silence. A whisper so quiet, you have to lean toward it to hear it at all. Here is the part nobody tells you about that cave. God could have drowned out the storm in Elijah's head with noise. He had wind. He had earthquake. He had fire. The man was already terrified of all three. God chose none of them. He went quieter than the storm. He went into a sound so small that Elijah had to leave the cave to hear it. Now watch what happens next. God asked Elijah one question. "What dost thou hear, Elijah?" And Elijah answers with the full overthinking spiral. "I have been very jealous for the Lord. The people have forsaken thy covenant. They have thrown down thine altars. They have slain thy prophets. I, even I only am left, that they seek my life." God does not correct the spiral. He repeats the exact same question, word for word. "What doest thou hear, Elijah?" As if to say, now answer it from a different place. Now answer it from after the silence. Then God named 7,000 others. The lie at the center of every overthinker spiral, I am the only one, dies in one sentence. 7,000. By name. They have been there the whole time. Augustine, 1600 years ago, wrote one sentence in the opening of his Confessions that has outlived every empire that has tried to bury it. Our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. The cave on Horeb is the proof. And then God gives Elijah the one next thing. Not a 5-step recovery plan, not a sabbatical. One sentence. Go anoint Elisha. Train your replacement. There is more work and someone after you to carry it. That is the 7th overthinker. So let me give you 3 things to walk away with. And the third one is the one I want you to carry into your next 3 a.m. The first one is this. God does not show up to overthinkers the way overthinkers expect him to. He does not flood the room with noise. He does not hand you a 5-step plan. He does not yell over the storm in your head. He uses your name. He asks you a question. He gives you one next thing. And then he waits. The second one is harder. If you have been waiting for God to silence the storm in your head before you take one step, you have misread every single story in this video. He did not silence the wind for Moses. He did not calm the sea before Peter walked. He did not answer Sarah's doubts before he gave her Isaac. He did not even wait for the wind to die down before he pulled Peter out of the water. The next step comes first. The clarity comes after, every single time, in every single one of these stories. And the third one is the one I want you to hold on to. If you are listening to this at 3 a.m, in the only room left in the house, with the wrong colored ceiling running the conversation again, hear this. The God who passed Mount Horeb did not yell over Elijah's collapse. He went quieter than it. He went into the thin, whispering hush. He spoke the prophet's name. He fed him bread before he gave him a single word of instruction. And he will do the same for you. Not above the noise, inside it. Now I have a question for you before you go. Which one of these 7 did you see yourself in the most? Was it Sarah behind the tent? Was it Moses arguing with the bush? Was it Martha in the kitchen? Was it Peter on the water? Or was it Elijah in the cave? Tell me below, and tell me the words you needed to hear. 7 overthinkers, 1 pattern, and 1 God who has never, not once, in the entire Bible, told a single anxious mind to just stop thinking. He just walked in and called them by name